How's it going, guys? In this video I'm going to be exploring the pros and cons, the differences and similarities between a steel string acoustic guitar and a nylon string acoustic guitar. This video is intended for people who are either new at guitar and perhaps still very much a beginner, or for those people who don't play guitar yet and haven't bought a guitar yet, and what to be aware of before you make that all-important decision of buying your first guitar. Now, if you don't know what you're looking for, or perhaps you haven't ever held a guitar before, you can be forgiven for thinking two guitars such as these look identical. They both look like acoustic guitars. But the difference is the type of strings that are on them, and then there are a couple of other things that give away which type of guitar we have here. So the guitar that I have here is my Faith Nomad. It's my travel-sized acoustic guitar, and it has steel strings on it, which we'll have a close-up on now. And that means that the thinnest couple of strings basically look like cheese wire. And then we have what are called phosphor bronze strings that are wound strings, and they're on the thickest 4 strings. And then we have this fairly typical beginner level, entry level nylon stringed acoustic guitar. All the strings on this guitar are made of nylon, and at first try, these are much easier and softer on the fingers, so they mean that your fingers don't hurt as much. And that makes these a very popular choice for beginners, and in particular children, and in particular in schools. You kind of see these and perhaps these only in schools. And that is one plus in the column for nylon string guitars. However, my sort of argument and point with this video is that this nylon string typed guitar and ones that are similar to it are for a certain type of music which is not in the pop and rock genres, and therefore it is not my recommendation for those people who are new to guitar and are perhaps considering or are already following my lesson videos. I would recommend that anybody watching my videos, no matter your age, no matter what style of guitar you're following, if you like my videos, it's a steel string acoustic guitar all the way. And I've got a separate video which covers like the pros and cons between electric and acoustic guitar. But this one we're just sticking to, you know, these nylon string guitars, because they're everywhere. I mean, it just seems that people have this type of guitar, just families have them in the back of a wardrobe or in the loft somewhere. They must have been giving these out with cornflakes or something in the 80s, because they just seem to be everywhere. And as I say, they're very popular in schools. But I would argue that these are actually harder to play for kids and even for adult learners who are totally new at guitar. And there's a couple of reasons why I would argue that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. There is no right or wrong with this. Music is all about personal preference. Guitars are very personal things. What works for one person won't work for another. But I would argue that the neck itself is so much thicker, and if we just compare, hopefully you can see this between the two guitars, the steel string acoustic guitar, no matter of its size, is always going to be thinner than a much thicker and beefier and a much thicker nylon stringed acoustic guitar. So therefore it is going to be tougher, for example, for any beginner or any kid of any age learning, for example, the C chord. I would also argue that budget nylon string guitars don't stay in tune as well as budget steel string acoustic guitars, because of how nylon strings, in my experience, can slip a little bit easier than steel strings. I've noticed this with ukuleles as well. Very cheap ukuleles, you know, we're sort of talking the £10 toy things, $10 things. They don't stay in tune at all, and it can be very frustrating for a beginner having to retune your guitar all the time, and that is just not what it has to be like, and it can ruin the whole experience of learning guitar. And as I say, if you're following my lessons, we're normally using a pick to strum the guitar, and it just doesn't really sound the same as when you play any steel string guitar, which would sound a lot brighter and more like the same tonal quality that you would hear on your favourite recordings. Regarding steel string guitars themselves, you guys have only seen me play steel string acoustic guitars in every one of my videos. Doesn't matter the type, doesn't matter the brand. If I'm playing an acoustic guitar, which is a hollow-bodied, non-amplified, or does work as a non-amplified instrument, though we can get electrics and we can plug them in so that you can play a gig or record with it easier, for example. To get the sound that I get with my acoustic guitars in my lesson videos, you want an acoustic, steel-stringed acoustic guitar. And I highly recommend the smaller bodied ones. So this is a 3/4 size, the sort of Ed Sheeran travel-sized guitar. This one's by Faith, it's called a Faith Nomad. Compare that to my sort of main guitar, as it were. It's so much bigger, and it can be a real thing that puts so many people off. When they're first learning their first chords, they just suddenly have to have this big thing on their lap that feels like they're hugging a bear and they can't see your fingertips or where they're going. And it's so much more easier in the early days, but also kind of at any level, to have the guitar closer into your body, and it sort of teaches a lot of good habits, in my opinion. As I say, these are just my opinions. Now, the main difference between any steel-stringed acoustic guitar compared to a nylon string one, you'll always see it straight away in the headstock. There are different types of headstocks and there are different designs, but these are the most common two. And the nylon strings one typically have these holes in them, just because of how they tend to be wound and the style of guitar. They have the two slots with the tuning pegs facing backwards, compared to the tuning pegs sticking outwards and no slots or holes in the headstock of a steel string acoustic guitar. They're also strung differently at the bridge, so on the body of the guitar, and you don't want to ever put steel strings on a nylon string guitar or vice versa. They are different instruments really, even though they are so similar. Now, so I'm not being too negative against the nylon string guitar. These are actually better and fantastic for certain types of music. Now, these are actually can be known as classical guitars or Spanish guitars. And it's that kind of music that these are fantastic for and excel better than and different than the steel stringed acoustic. I think the only video I've ever taught which would sound better on a nylon string, just because of the songs that I've chosen to teach on this channel, would be Remember Me from Coco. And I hope Coco inspired a few people to pick up guitar because it was a fantastic movie. So kind of... beautiful song, really cool, but a world away from the kind of 3-chord stuff we do typically on this channel. Now, if all you have is a nylon string guitar and that's all you have available to you at the moment, please stick with it, please still practice on it, and please know that when you're making chord shapes that some beginners really struggle with, such as the C, which is a lot wider, it can be a lot easier to play that chord on a steel string or any real electric guitar or on any steel string acoustic guitar, and particularly on the smaller scale ones, which, as I say, are absolutely played by adults such as Ed Sheeran. And this is, it isn't a budget range one. It's more in the budget range of what Faith offer, but it is more along the lines of a premium instrument. But there are so many options with travel-sized guitars now. They're really popular, and there are a lot of options. And if I was to recommend anyone for a total beginner or a child or a teenager learning, I would at least get someone to try a travel-sized guitar and see if they like it. They do have a slightly thinner, slightly less sort of rounded sound, so they don't sound as big as the bigger bodies, but I think the playability of them really makes them stand apart and would be my #1 recommendation, especially with, at the time of releasing this video, with Christmas not too far away. A travel-size acoustic guitar or any steel string acoustic would be my recommendations for those people wanting to start on guitar and for those people that want to stick with acoustic guitar when they're first starting out. Thank you so much for checking out this video, guys. I've got some more gear and guitar comparisons and recommendations for you on the screen now. I hope you subscribe to my Andy Guitar YouTube channel, and I hope you found this video useful, and I really wish you all the best with your guitar journey.